Well, I'm Sister Joan Weisenbeck, Franciscan sister, Perpetual Adoration. I'm from a family of 8, and I grew up on a farm, close to Durand, Wisconsin. And when I came to the community, it was in 1953. So I have been a FSPA for 67 years. I attended all 3 trips to Eastern Europe, and those 3 trips were Hungary, Slovakia, and Romania. Well, I think I always liked images. I remember my childhood how my parents had religious images, hanging on their walls. And when I celebrated my Silver Jubilee, I was given an icon as a gift. And I just think that was kind of the very specific event that led me to explore a little bit more what icons are and how they express the mysteries of our faith. And icon really comes from a Greek word meaning image. And so way back in the early church, that goes way back into the history of the early church, that icons were considered equal to Scripture, and they were intended to be representative of some of the mysteries that we read in the Gospels and the Scriptures. So that's kind of the spirituality behind my interest, I think, because I've been in ministries that touch into the depth of spirituality, and I love that as my work. Yes, I was invited by my sister Marlene, who's also an FSPA, and she had done some study when she was getting her PhD. She had done some study on iconography, and in the course of time, eventually she met a sister at a convention who was very interested in bringing back iconography in Eastern Europe because it had been lost during the communist regime. So I loved to travel, and she knew that I was good at creating prayer experiences, and so it was just great. Icons, are really meant to reveal God, to reveal the mysteries of our faith, and to do that by painting or what is often referred to as writing icons. I would say probably one of the big challenges was the language, communicating, because we had people from not only from Hungary and Romania and Slovakia, but from Italy and Poland and Ukraine. And so it's like almost every word out of our mouths had to be translated 5 times. And so, like when I would lead the prayers, I had to wait for all those translations to take place before I even said the next sentence. So it was, it slowed us down. I think that was a learning experience too. And part of that slowing down was the invitation to reflect on what we were doing, to reflect on whatever saint or whatever mystery it was that we were painting in our icons. So we, most of the time, just enjoyed being with the group and eating meals with them and playing, having fun with them and exchanging little gifts off and on. So that was all in addition to the learning how to, what the icon was all about. Well, while I was there, I wondered how can I share this with others? We had really gone to considerable efforts to raise money to go there, different places where each of us were in ministry. And the community, of course, supported us. And so how do you share something like that? So I asked Phil Zimmerman, who was our instructor and the master iconographer that went with us on each of those trips. I asked him after the experience in Hungary, I said, what do you think about offering a workshop or retreat where I was working, which was in Naperville, Illinois at the time? Well, he was all for it. I mean, he was doing it in Pennsylvania with students of his own tradition. And so I planned it at Naperville where I was working. And we just had an amazing response, from the Chicago area, and people were coming, a number of the parishioners. It was like we had almost too many to be able to handle the workshop. And then a couple of years later, when I came here to the Spirituality Center, I thought, well, let's continue this. Same thing happened. We had such a large group for that first icon workshop retreat, which was in 2002, that we decided to start offering more than one a year. And so this has gone on for over 20 years. It's still going on at the Spirituality Center, and people are still coming, and they're still offering sometimes 2 or 3 a year. We come from a variety of traditions, and people get just invited into the experience, and many of them come back again and again and again. So it's just been one of the highlights of my life to know that I could go to Eastern Europe, that I could bring back, that way of creating. Well, if you want to do it, you can do it. It's a process. It's a process of learning patience, of following the instructor's directions, of avoiding putting in a lot of your own creativity. It's meant to duplicate the images in the ancient tradition that have been approved by the church over many, many years. If one can accept yourself when you make mistakes, that is key. It's one of the big things I think we learn, that sometimes we can make a mistake as we're painting, whatever it might be, and not to try to avoid being critical about that. Because as our instructor would tell us, you criticize your work and you're criticizing yourself. So, that principle of being able to try to accept what you can create. And as I have been thinking about this, it's kind of like being imitating God the Creator. And even though you're replicating images that have been approved by the church way back, centuries back, there is a certain amount of creativity that comes out. So you're all painting the same image, but everyone is unique and a little bit different. Well, I can articulate several Franciscan values, but I'm going to pick out 3 that I first didn't think of, but I think are very, very much part of how we live Franciscan values. And the first one is relationships. I mean, in these trips to Europe, we developed relationships with the people who came from different cultures, different countries, and intermingled with them and learned from them, and had many interesting encounters in those years from 1998 to 2004. And, relationship with a master iconographer, Bill Zimmerman. And we still kind of joke with each other when he comes here. He says, you tamed me a bit. I mean, he's more serene and more peaceful, I think, than when we first met. And I think it's due to working together and, sharing each other's gifts and accepting each other's limitations. So relationships, I think, would be one way that I would say that we were always practicing Franciscan values. The second was beauty. I love beauty. People love beauty. People, I think, have an innate desire to create and to see beautiful things. And at the end of these workshops, when you have created a beautiful thing, there is such a delight, and people are just so amazed, I guess, that they can do this, and that somehow or other they got through the process step by step by step. And Phil Zimmerman, our master iconographer, is very willing to help and to do the more difficult pieces, because he said, I'd rather do them for you than to correct them if you do them wrong. For instance, the halos, there's a special technique in putting on the gold and circling the halos. Also, learning the rules of iconography, and there are some, like when you name an icon, you usually use Greek letters to name the icon, although we have used English as well. But to learn how to write those letters So, yes, beauty. The one of the things that the Byzantine Catholics will say, or the Orthodox persons who belong to that tradition, will say that icons are windows into heaven. And it's just interesting because sometimes when I'd walk into the churches in these various places, and the church is filled with icons, the whole front, is just filled with icons according to a particular order. And you are in the presence of all those beautiful images. And it is kind of like looking from a window into heaven. And so at first when I heard that, I thought, well, okay. But when you experience it, so it's kind of why I like to have icons in my room, to keep being inspired and keep remembering what these people, whether it's Mary or Jesus or a saint, what they represent and how they lived. And the third value is contemplation. And of course, that is a very strong Franciscan trait. And Clara of Assisi, in her letters that she left, taught us how to contemplate by gazing, considering, contemplating, and imitating those 4 steps. And when I write an icon, or when I paint an icon, it's easy for me to enter into that reality, in silence or however, whatever the situation I'm in, is to focus on the mystery that I'm painting. And so, we do that we do it kind of naturally when we gaze at creation, or when we gaze at the beauty of a newborn baby, or when we see a rainbow or a sunset. But, it's kind of just natural that we want to look at it, want to gaze at it. That's very Franciscan, and of course Francis, he did that all the time. He'd go off and pray for hours and gaze at the crosses of that time. And so those 3 traits came to me as I was reflecting on how these experiences of writing icons have taught me in a deeper way to contemplate, to see beauty, and to be in relationship in all the different ways that we are.